The courtroom was ice cold. Not because of the air conditioning but because of the looks that pierced Clara from every angle. She sat at the plaintiff's table alone. No wedding ring. No smile. Just the quiet dignity of a woman watching the life she built being dissected for sport. Across from her sat her ex-husband Victor, legs crossed casually like he was waiting for a latte. Not a verdict. Next to him, in a crimson blazer and stiletto heels, sat Valentina, the woman who had destroyed Clara's marriage and didn't even have the decency to pretend she felt sorry for it. And when Valentina took the stand, the air in the room shifted. "Did Clara ever threaten you?" the lawyer asked. Valentina nodded dramatically. "Yes," she said, her voice dripping with false nerves. "She said if I didn't leave Victor, she'd destroy me. She followed me once. I was terrified." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Clara blinked. Her lips parted but no sound came out. Her attorney didn't object in time. "She stalked me," Valentina continued. "She screamed outside my building. She said I'd pay for what I did." Objection. But it was too late. The judge let the testimony stand, noting its emotional impact on the custody consideration. Clara's heart sank lower than it ever had. Even deeper than the night she found Victor's phone unlocked. Even deeper than the night he packed a single bag and walked out while she sobbed on the stairs. And when Valentina stepped down from the witness box and returned to her seat, she smiled. Not politely. Not nervously. She smiled like a woman who had just buried her enemy under oath. And knew it. That smile would haunt Clara for years. That and the laughter. As the court adjourned for the day and Clara stood to leave, she overheard it. A sharp, high-pitched cackle. Valentina. Laughing. Like it was all a game. Like destroying a woman's marriage, credibility, and custody rights was just a particularly entertaining Tuesday. Clara didn't speak. She didn't scream. She didn't lunge or cry. She just walked. Out of the courtroom, out of her old life, and straight into the unknown. The months that followed were a blur of headlines, court appeals, and unbearable silence. Her son, Luca, once the center of her world, was now living with Victor and her. She had visitation, but the court believed Valentina was the more stable maternal figure now. Victor had twisted everything. He claimed Clara had become unbalanced, too consumed by work, too neglectful of her family. It was laughable if it hadn't cost her everything. Friends chose sides. Most stayed silent. Her parents, both long past, couldn't defend her. And Clara was too proud to beg anyone else to. For a while she stopped answering the phone. Stopped leaving the apartment. Stopped caring. She resigned from the hospital where she worked as an attending. Not because of a scandal, because every day in those hallways reminded her of how quickly she had lost control of her own narrative. Medicine had been her purpose. But suddenly she felt like a fraud. A broken woman trying to stitch up others while bleeding internally. Until one night months later she got a call. Chapter 3. The fire rekindled. Dr. Moreno. Clara barely recognized her name. She hadn't used the title in so long it felt foreign. "This is Dr. Un from Mercy West. I know this is out of the blue. But we have a surgical teaching position open. Someone passed your name along." "Passed my name?" Clara asked hoarsely. "Dr. Lemaire. From the conference in Chicago last year." Clara remembered. Barely. She had spoken on cardiac trauma protocols. Back when her eyes still sparkled and her hands still felt steady. "We need someone sharp," Un continued. "And I think you need a place to be needed." Something about that line cracked through Clara's shell. She didn't answer right away. But by the end of the week, she packed 2 suitcases, left the city that had swallowed her whole, and drove to a new hospital with trembling hands. Mercy West was a smaller hospital with a lot of chaos and very little ego. Suited Clara perfectly. She started teaching again, then assisting in surgeries, then leading them. The old rhythm returned slowly, like feeling coming back to frostbitten fingers. But once it did, it came roaring. Her name started getting whispered in the halls again, but this time with respect. Dr. Moreno's cardio repair saved the patient. Did you see how she caught the bleed before anyone else? She's surgical steel. She still missed Luca. Nothing filled that space. But she sent cards. Tried to call. Valentina often screened her efforts. But sometimes Luca picked up. Even if only for 2 minutes. And Clara never mentioned the courtroom. Never spoke his father's name. Never hinted at the mistress who had stolen her motherhood. Instead, she poured her soul into every patient, every incision, every chance to feel like herself again. Until one night, the ER paged her while she was finishing a double bypass. Female, early 40s, blunt force trauma, MVA, internal bleeding, cardiac tamponade suspected. We need you now. Clara scrubbed out, gave orders, and rushed down to the trauma bay. She didn't recognize the woman on the stretcher at first. Too much blood, too much panic. But when the nurse peeled back the oxygen mask for intubation and Clara locked eyes with the patient, her stomach dropped. Valentina, the woman who had laughed at her destruction. Everything stopped. The beeping of monitors. The panicked voices of interns. The chaos around Clara blurred into silence as her eyes locked on the face of the woman lying bloodied and broken on the stretcher. Valentina. Her hair was shorter, dyed darker. Her makeup smudged. Her chest rising unevenly under the weight of the trauma. But those eyes. Clara would never forget those eyes. The same ones that sparkled with arrogance on the witness stand. The same ones that narrowed as she smiled through a lie. Clara didn't speak. Dr. Moreno? A nurse asked. You okay? She nodded once. Her voice came slow and surgical. Prep the ore. Get me her scans. Cross-match blood. We're going in now. No one questioned her. Inside the ore, Clara stood scrubbed and sterile over the woman who once left her life in pieces. Multiple rib fractures. Pericardial effusion confirmed. Possible tear near the right atrium, the assisting surgeon said. Valentina was already under. Breathing tube in. Unconscious. Powerless. But Clara's heart was thundering. She stared at the chest she was about to open. The same chest Valentina had puffed out with pride as she lied in court. The same woman who had taken her child, her name, her home. Now she lay exposed, broken, dependent on Clara's skill. One wrong cut. One slight hesitation. One flick of the wrist. Well, Clara blinked the thought away. She wasn't that woman. Not anymore. She inhaled. Scalpel. And began. The damage was worse than the scans showed. Blood pooled fast. The pericardial sac was ballooning, suffocating the heart. Clara moved quickly, draining fluid, locating the source. Her hands moved with memory, not emotion. But then she saw something strange. Tissue scarring near the atrium. Not from the crash. Older. Surgical. Did she have a previous cardiac procedure? Clara asked. No mention in the chart, the nurse replied. Clara frowned. The scarring wasn't typical. It was jagged, unrefined. Almost like someone had cut her once and not documented it. Then she found it. Tucked behind the scarred wall of tissue. A thin strip of surgical mesh. Nearly degraded. What the hell? She whispered. And that's when the blood pressure monitor spiked. Valentina's heart was struggling again. Focus, Moreno, she told herself. Fix her first. Questions later. 2 hours later, the surgery was over. Valentina had lived. Clara walked out of the OR drenched in sweat, shaking slightly. Not from the effort. From the restraint. She had done it. She had saved the life of the woman who watched her crumble. Who helped her lose her son. Who rewrote her story like she was the villain. And now, Valentina lay sedated in recovery. Alive only because Clara refused to be like her. But that mesh. That scar. It gnawed at her. Clara pulled the intake forms again. Nothing about prior heart surgery. No reference to chronic heart conditions. And yet, someone had cut into Valentina years ago. For what? 3 days passed before Valentina woke up. Clara stood at the foot of her hospital bed, watching her blink groggily at the ceiling. When she finally spoke, her voice rasped. "You?" Clara nodded. "It's me." Valentina swallowed, voice barely audible. "You saved me." "I'm your surgeon," Clara said coldly. "That's what I do." But Valentina's eyes, once so smug, now shimmered with something Clara hadn't expected. Fear, guilt, something close to remorse. "You didn't let me die." "No." Valentina tried to laugh but winced from the pain. "I deserved it." Clara said nothing. "You don't understand," Valentina said, tears welling. "I didn't lie in court. Not completely. He made me do it." Clara's brows furrowed. "What are you talking about?" "He said if I didn't testify, if I didn't destroy you in court, he'd ruin my family. My sister owed him money. My father was on parole. He used them against me." Clara stepped back. "You expect me to believe that now?" Valentina closed her eyes, a single tear running down her cheek. "You think I laughed in court because I won?" "No. I laughed because I hated myself. Because I had no way out." Clara felt her pulse throb in her ears. "I didn't just cheat with him. He owned me," Valentina whispered. "I wanted to warn you, but he watched everything." Clara stood in stunned silence. "And Clara, I didn't know about the baby." Clara's heart froze. "What baby?" Valentina's eyes opened again, this time with something else behind them. "Luca isn't his." Clara's stomach dropped. "What?" Valentina was trembling now. "Victor did something. I don't know how, but he switched records, manipulated test results. Luca is not his biological child." Clara stepped back again, gripping the edge of the sink. "I found out a year ago, but I was scared to come forward." "Who is Luca's father then?" Clara asked. "I don't know, but it's not him. And I think that's why he's kept Luca so far away from you. He knows the truth would ruin him." That night Clara couldn't sleep. She stared at old court documents, custody records, birth certificates, her own testimony. Everything had been built on a lie. She'd lost her child, her life, her name, and none of it was real. Victor had orchestrated the perfect downfall. And Valentina, even if reluctantly, had been his weapon. But now Clara had something she hadn't had back then. Power. Access. Resources. She didn't know who Luca's real father was, but she was going to find out. And when she did, it wouldn't just be her reputation that Victor would lose. It would be everything. Clara knew better than to trust words alone. She needed proof. It started with a quiet phone call to a trusted friend, Dr. Francesca Allen, a genetics specialist who owed her a favor from residency. "I need a discreet paternity test," Clara said. "No paperwork. No chain of custody." Francesca paused. "Clara, what is this? I just need to know if the man listed as my son's father actually is." Francesca understood. "I'll text you a contact." 2 days later, Clara met a courier in the parking lot behind the hospital and handed him an envelope with a hairbrush sealed in a sterile bag. Luca had left it behind during a brief visit last year. It was all she had. The courier nodded and drove off without a word. A week passed. Clara worked her shifts, checked on Valentina, avoided Victor's name in every conversation. But when the results arrived, printed and folded into a discreet envelope, her knees almost gave out. Probability of paternity, 0%. Victor was not Luca's father. It was real. It was in ink. It was undeniable. Her mind spun. That meant the entire custody case had been a fraud. The court had granted parental rights to a man who wasn't even biologically tied to her son. But who was? Clara returned to her storage unit that weekend, an emotional graveyard of old case files, court boxes, and personal journals. She dug through everything, looking for anything that might explain what happened during her pregnancy. And there, tucked inside a linen-bound notebook from 10 years ago, she found a page that stopped her heart. "Victor insisted I take the paternity test early," Said he wanted peace of mind before the baby came. I thought it was weird, but I agreed. He took the samples to the clinic himself. Came back with results the next day. Said Luca was definitely his. I didn't even get to see the original lab report. Just the printout he brought. Clara sat on the cold concrete floor, trembling. He had switched the test. Manipulated everything. And now he was raising a child that wasn't his. Not out of love, but to punish her. Clara didn't announce herself. She showed up on Victor's doorstep like a storm. He opened the door with that same smug smirk she remembered from court. "Wow," he said. "Look who's back from the dead." She handed him the paternity report. "Read it." He laughed, until his eyes scanned the result. Then the smirk disappeared. Clara's voice was calm, cold, surgical. "You stole my child. Lied in court. Had your mistress commit perjury. You manipulated every piece of my life." Victor crumpled the paper and tossed it aside. "You think a piece of paper changes anything?" I raised him. I paid for his school. You were always too busy with your career. Clara didn't flinch. And you were always too busy burying the truth. You want to blow up his life now. You think he'll thank you? "No," she said. "I don't need him to thank me. I just need the truth to come out." Victor leaned in. "You'll drag him through another custody battle? Put him on the stand? You think the media won't have a field day?" "I don't need a battle," she said, turning to leave. "I have the truth. And the court will too." Clara didn't go to the press. She didn't file a new lawsuit. She did something far quieter, and far more devastating. She filed a sealed appeal with the family court, including the DNA evidence, her journal entry, and a sworn affidavit from Valentina. She also attached medical records showing signs of psychological coercion and abuse. Took months, but the day finally came. The judge granted full custody to Clara, pending a formal transition process with a court-appointed counselor. Victor didn't even show up to the hearing. Valentina did. She sat in the back, thinner, quieter, older. When Clara walked past her, their eyes met. Valentina mouthed, "Thank you." Clara didn't reply, but she nodded. Just once. Luca didn't take the news well at first. He was confused. Angry. His whole life had been shaped by a lie. But Clara didn't rush him. She told him only what he needed to know when he was ready. She cooked dinner, walked with him through the park, showed him her world, the hospital, the lives she helped save, the strength she had rebuilt. Slowly, he began to open up again. One night he asked, "Why did you save her?" Clara knew what he meant. "Because if I hadn't, I wouldn't be your mother." He frowned. She lied. She was trapped. But she told the truth in the end. That's more than some people ever do. Luca thought for a moment. Then, "I'm glad you were the one who operated on her." So was she. Months passed. One morning, Clara stood in the OR again. The beeping of monitors filled the room, steady, rhythmic, alive. Another patient. Another life in her hands. But something was different now. She no longer carried the courtroom with her. No longer replayed the laughter or the betrayal. She had cut away the rot, sutured the truth back together. And though the scars remained, inside her and on Valentina, they were no longer wounds, just reminders. When Clara closed her eyes that night, she didn't see the smirk. She saw her son, smiling. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.